This is Mr. Gillum, and today we're going to be looking at an example problem from our Practice and Problem Solving book on page 43. In an after-school sports program, 70% of 400 students play soccer. How many students play soccer? So in this case, we have just one question for this scenario. And it asks how many students play soccer. Well, we know there are 400 students, and we know that 70% of them are playing soccer. So before we take a look at this diagram here that they've drawn, this model of percent, let's talk about this if we were to solve it as like just using an expression. I need to know how many play soccer, and I know that that represented by 70% of the 400 students. So when I said that, I actually am going to write that down. 70% of 400 is the number that I'm really looking for. So that's the number of students that actually play soccer. So when I think about this in mathematical terms, instead of percents and words and numbers, I think, okay, well, percent means per 100. So I can consider 70% as 70 over 100. The word of indicates multiplication, and then we have, of course, 400. You can solve this next part or continue on with this next part of the expression two ways. You can multiply straight across and then reduce, or you can cross reduce and then multiply. I prefer to cross reduce, but the book shows it just by multiplying straight across. I know that a lot of teachers teach it that way as well. 70 times 400 is 28,000, and 100 times 1 is 100. If I divide a number by 100, I know I'm moving the decimal place 2 times, or I can think about it as just crossing out zeros. When I divide by 100, really, that just indicates that 100 parts will move it 2 decimal places. Anyway, 280 is what I'm going to say. 280 students is 70% of 400. Those 280 students play soccer. So that's one way we could attempt to solve the problem by using an expression. They also have created this nice table here, this model, and at the beginning of the model is 0, of course, and at the end of the model is 400. And they separate it into 10 parts, each part representing 10% of 400. So I know, because I've done a lot of math problems in my day, that like if I said 10% of like 50, that would be 5. Or 10% of 650, that would be 65. Or 10% of, oh, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be 123.4. And I know this because I've done a lot of these problems. When I want 10% of something, I'm really just moving the decimal one spot. And so you can see that that calculation is very simple if you think of it like that. So that's one of the reasons they separated into 10%, because 10% is a quick calculation. So in this case, they knew that, okay, 10% of 400 would be 40. So each 10% has 40 inside of it. As we go along, 10% would be 40, 20% would be 2 10%, or 80, then 120, 160, 200, 240, 280, 320, 360, and then 400. So each percent that goes by is a sum of the other percents in front of it. So like 50%, we could find 60% by adding 50 and 10, or 40 and 200. That'd be 60%, which would be 240. In this case, we're looking at 70%, the number that we're looking for, and 70% just so happens to be 280, which we agree with our expression. 280 students play soccer. So there's a lot of approaches to take. The model will take a little bit longer to do, but if it's necessary to find the correct answer, please do take that route, okay? But that's an example for today. I'm sure I've answered some of your questions on your homework accidentally for you, but that's kind of how it works. Okay, so that's it.